Welcome to Conservative Sense by Stephen Flanagan, founder of the Conservative Society for Action, brought to you on the CSA Radio Network, where common sense and uncommon actions come together to save America. This is Conservative Sense on the WKRLN Radio Network. I want to talk to you today a little bit about the history of the conservative movement, about some of the things that are going on recently in the news, including Facebook's attempt to stifle conservative thought in this country, which is a pretty serious issue. But I want to give you a little background as to where we're coming from, where Conservative Society for Action came from, so you have a better understanding on whether this is the type of show that you might want to listen to in the future. The Conservative Society for Action started in late 2008. It was after the huge financial bailout that took place back in those days, called the TARP program, Troubled Asset Relief Program. That program was a huge government bailout of the banks and financial institutions because millions of people and homeowners who purchased homes realized that they couldn't pay back those loans, and it put a lot of stress on the financial markets. Now, I took a look at that thing. It was a $750 billion bailout. And I did the math on that. According to the government at that time, that was actually under the Bush administration, there were about 2 million homes that were so-called underwater, meaning the value of the mortgages had exceeded the value of the home. Sort of an upside-down mortgage is what they referred to it. But if you did the math and divided $750 billion by 2 million, you found out that government was actually allocating $600,000 or $700,000 to bail out homes that averaged a worth of under $200,000. In other words, the Troubled Asset Relief Program could easily have purchased the mortgages, paid for the mortgages of those 2 million homes, and still had about $400 billion left over. Now, it doesn't take a genius to understand that there was a lot more money involved and a lot more going on at that time. And honestly, I had been involved in politics for a long time, locally, as well as state level, some federal campaigns and things, mostly as an outsider and as an observer. And it became eminently clear to me that anyone who had a calculator knew that the TARP program, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, was bogus and that it wasn't needed. What made things worse is that the conditions that caused the so-called financial breakdown were actually the result of actions of Congress. The Congress of the United States actually in 1999 actually passed legislation requiring Fannie Mae to make loans to potential homeowners who obviously did not have the financial capability to pay back those loans. These types of loans were forced on the financial institutions by the government in order to maintain your charter. Now, I just think that is an excessive use of government. It was designed basically as part of a social engineering program. And what these government decided to do was tell banks that if you want to stay in business, you have to give loans to people that cannot afford them. And they wanted to do that because they believed in home ownership, which I believe in also, but it also forced the banks into a bad situation. And what really bothers me is that the House Banking Committee, which was run under Barney Frank at the time, it was their legislation that forced financial institutions to make bad loans that caused the crisis in the first place. And then those same people on that same banking committee decided that they were going to fix the problem, which of course they never did. Now, despite all that, we're in a situation now where there are a lot of homes underwater, and will continue to be. Anyway, that was pretty much the genesis of it. We started our program back then, and that was how Conservative Society for Action started. We've been running ever since. Anyway, we're going to pause for a little word from our sponsors, and we'll get into some more information coming up shortly, especially about censorship that seems to be taking place in our country today.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Everyone loves liberty. Our rights come from God, not the government. So why are you letting other people tell you what's best for your health care? Exercise your freedom with Liberty Health Share. Liberty Health Share is a community of people who voluntarily share one another's medical costs. Liberty Health Share is founded on the idea that most people truly want to help one another. Healthcare sharing allows members to do just that as a true community that supports one another in times of need. Liberty believes people should make decisions for themselves and their families. Members are able to take back the freedom to make their own decisions about their healthcare. care, freedom from guilt or doubt about how your money is used. You have the freedom to direct your health care, not to be dictated to by bureaucrats. Stop letting others tell you what to do and join a community of like-minded people. Exercise your freedom. Join Liberty HealthShare and take back the control of your health care while helping those around you. Call Liberty at 855-58-LIBERTY. Again, that's 855-58-LIBERTY for more information, or you can check them out at libertyhealthshare.org. Again, that's libertyhealthshare.org.
Welcome back to Conservative Sense on the CSA Radio Network. Welcome back. I just wanted to give a little background on the previous discussion we had about the Troubled Asset Relief Program. A lot of people don't realize that government interference in our economy is happening at all levels. Especially at the financial institution level. There's millions of regulations that banks and lending institutions have to live under in order to maintain their charter to do business. Now you have to look up something by way of history called the Community Reinvestment Act. This is where it all began. It was in 1977, and there were some things going on at that time that caused concern to certain incomes and certain income level communities. There was something going on back in those days called redlining, where a bank would operate in a neighborhood, but then they would refuse to give loans in certain neighborhoods because of the overall average value of the properties and or the income of the individuals there. Well, the Congress of the United States decided that that wasn't fair and basically said very simply now, if you're going to do business in a community, you will have to make loans and help support that community that you're operating in. Now, I kind of agreed with that. I generally disagree with government interference in any business, but in that particular case there was a grievance, and it seemed to make sense. Anyway, as is true with a lot of government things, there's unintended consequences, and a government program that started out with a couple of hundred pages ends up being a couple of thousand, 10,000, 100,000 pages. That's pretty much what happened with the Community Reinvestment Act. So what happened is, in 1999, the government decided, again the government meaning the Congress of the United States primarily, that there weren't enough loans being made to low-income individuals. And they thought that was not fair. People who could afford to have a loan, it was unfair that they could afford it and get the home, apparently. And they decided that they would take care of this so-called inequity by forcing Fannie Mae to make loans. Now that was pretty much the birth of the subprime loan era of finance in this country. Now, I looked up the meaning of a subprime loan, and basically it's this. A subprime loan is a loan offered to people who do not qualify for a conventional loan, either because of low income, a high loan-to-value ratio, or poor credit history. Now, if I'm lending money to somebody, and they have low income, a high loan-to-value ratio, which means they're borrowing close to the total value of the house, and or they have poor credit, why would I give that person a loan? It's obvious that that person's going to have a problem paying back the loan. Now, if you're in business and your business is to make loans, you want to get paid back and make your interest. Well, in 1999, it all changed. The Congress of the United States decided that Fannie Mae had to make 52% of its loans to people of low income, of poor credit, or basically want 100% financing. That was unheard of in the financial markets as far as the banking markets. And honestly, it's no surprise that we had a financial meltdown less than basically 10 years later. That's how long it took for the economy basically to slip a little bit, for income levels to go down, and for economy to cool off. And once that happened, people stopped making their loan payments. Of course, there was a financial crisis. Yes, the banks were basically challenged, but the government said, too bad, we're just going to continue these loans. Here's some money, banks. Keep on doing it. And basically, that's a real simple couple of minute description of how we got into that initial financial crisis. We at Conservative Society for Action thought that that was not fair. And again, that's another reason that we started out with Conservative Society for Action. We want financial common sense in this country.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
My son was in the Army back during Desert Storm, but even then he wanted an MBA. He looked at a dozen schools, but only one offered the online education and flexibility he needed while he was in a tent in Iraq. Grantham University. Turns out that Grantham's been delivering affordable, relevant college and advanced degrees for over 65 years. Heck, if they can deliver a quality education to a soldier in a tent overseas, think about the flexibility Grantham can offer you so you can earn your degree too. It doesn't matter how complicated or full your life is. If getting a degree is on your bucket list, you'll want to do what my son did. You'll want to call Grantham. Find out how easy it is to get started on your education so you can check that college degree off your bucket list. Call Grantham right now. 800-910-1370. That's 800-910-1370. Flexible, affordable, relevant. Call 800-910-1370.
Welcome back to Conservative Sense on the CSA Radio Network. We spent the first part of the show discussing some of the excesses of government, again going back to the beginning of CSA and the Toxic Asset Relief Program. Again, it's a government program that went wrong, government program that caused pain and anguish on our country, destroyed the economic viability of our nation for a long period of time. The financial crisis was a serious thing that's still going on, and it was all caused by the Congress of the United States. Now, again, that's being one of the reasons for the birth of Conservative Society for Action. One of the things a lot of people ask right now, especially younger people, is, what is a conservative? Why is it important to be a conservative? And of course, you have all the stereotypes that are put out by the social media and by the mainstream media about what conservatives are, and we're ridiculed and we're made fun of and things like that as either being old-fashioned or stuck in our ways and things like that. But of course, nothing can be further from the truth. Most conservatives are quite open-minded. Most conservatives simply want to work, take care of their families with the least amount of interference from government and from big business and from other people, criminals, etc. And we just want to live our lives and we want to be left alone. The funny part about conservatism and the funny part about liberalism is the classic definitions of each have been stood on ear. A liberal, in the classic sense, is basically somebody who says anything goes. Unfortunately, they don't live that way anymore. Liberals are extremely intolerant, and liberals believe that they need to tell other people how to live their lives. Also, in the case of classic conservatism, classically, conservatives want things to stay the way they are. Well, not necessarily. Sometimes being a conservative means that you should study history and study facts and issues before making decisions. Now, the Founding Fathers, you might say, were conservative because they studied history. Now, there are a lot of people today, especially younger people, you hear about the millennial generation, they don't necessarily believe in history. I actually heard one young person that I was talking to one time, I brought up Ronald Reagan and the long expanding economy that took place under his style of economics. And that young person just looked back to me and says, Ronald Reagan, that's ancient history, as if it was meaningless. Well, the Founding Fathers, believe it or not, when they wrote the Constitution for the United States, relied very much on history. They studied what happened to the ancient Romans, the ancient Greece. They studied how fledgling democracies in history had fallen by the wayside, how every great society falls by the wayside. They understood that the greed and corruption of individuals in any society under any form of government was a danger, and that those dangers cannot be overcome. They also understood the old term, absolute power corrupts absolutely, which has been proven 1,000 times in history. It's actually very useful to study history. It's very useful to study precedent, which is done in the legal profession a lot. There's nothing wrong with looking back at history and saying, you know what, that those people, that country, those individuals, that town, that state, that group really knows what they're talking about. Basically, conservatives want to look at history, they want to look at precedent, they want to look at what works and what doesn't work, and make logical decisions based on that. That's what we've tried to do at CSA, and that's what we will continue to do. More on that in our next segment. You're listening to Conservative Sense by Stephen Flanagan on the CSA Radio Network.
Welcome to this Subway ad for the new Sesame Ginger Glazed Chicken Signature Wrap. How would you like it?
I'll take a...
Sports announcer at home?
Yeah, how'd you...
We just know.
My wife picks up the new Signature Wrap. It's got double the rotisserie-style chicken mixed with a sesame ginger glaze. She appears annoyed at me, but she shrugs it off. Those sweet and savory flavors are calling her name. She lifts the wrap and... she takes the bite! Incredible! And now she's closing the door on my... Subway, make it what you want.
Limited time only at participating restaurants. Double meat based on average 6-inch sub.
Every day, the men and women of the United States Marine Corps stand ready to defend the American way of life. The few, the proud, the Marines.
Welcome back to Conservative Sense on the CSA Radio Network. Now that we've covered what a conservative is, and of course we'll continue to discuss that many, many times because there is a lot of misunderstanding. Now we started in 2008, but it very quickly became clear that we weren't the only organization at that time who was sick and tired of this massive lurch to the left, which became eminently clear when Barack Obama was elected President of the United States. He talked about fundamentally changing America, and he meant it. If you looked at the proposals that candidate Obama was making during his presidential campaign, it would naturally scare the heck out of any conservative, probably any moderate, who actually paid attention to what he was saying. He certainly believed, and he had now a House and a Senate behind him, that government was the solution to all of our problems. But not only our problems. He wanted government to be the solution to problems that didn't even exist, such as where you should live, how much you should pay, your taxes, where your health care is going to come from, where your energy is going to come from, how much you're going to pay for things, etc. It was definitely a move towards central government control. That was not acceptable. When we started Conservative Society for Action, a lot of people asked me, well, if you're trying to change the minds of people in America, why would you start Conservative Society for Action? People who are not conservative won't join. And of course, that is correct. And what I told them was, we don't need people who are not conservative to join us. We need people who are conservative, but are also willing to spread the message. We also need people who are moderates, who would like to hear our message. But most importantly, we started Conservative Society for Action to distribute information to those people out there that had an open mind. If you look at the political reality of America, almost any place, usually elections are decided on a couple of percentage points either way. And when I had people ask us questions about the goals and objectives of Conservative Society for Action, I would say it's simple. We want to change the minds of 1% of the voters that will be voting in key elections, and at that time we had key elections coming up in the House, the Senate, and presidential campaigns. If we could change the mind of one out of 100 people, that's 2% at the polls. Previously to that, in the previous couple of years, there were a number of elections lost by, quote, moderate/conservative candidates in many key states, one of those being Florida. Florida was the biggest of the so-called battleground states or the swing states. And in that particular election, Barack Obama won by less than a half a point in each of those elections. Our goal was to change that. And here's the logic behind that. 1 out of 100. If 1 out of 100 people change their vote, that's 2% at the polls. Now, in a state like Florida, and many other states, swing states especially, that 2% is the difference between winning and losing. And when I say 1% change is 2%, every time somebody changes a vote from yes to no, that's actually 2 points difference. So take your typical 100 voters. What had happened in the previous election is, in the state of Florida and other similar types of states, our candidates lost by 1 out of 100. If you change 1 out of 100, you win. So the goal was not that daunting. And if you look at the history of CSA, we pretty much led the way on the formation of the Tea Party movement, which, as everybody knows, was incredibly successful. It followed up within a couple of years of starting to take back the House of Representatives for Republicans. Then we worked on Senate races and had the biggest turnaround in the Senate in the history of the United States. And then I would say the last segment and success of the National Tea Party movement was the election of Donald Trump. Not necessarily a conservative by nature, but definitely not a socialist. Anyway, there have been successes, and we hope that there will be continued successes with your support. By the way, check us out on Facebook at Conservative Society for Action. And don't forget to like our page when you get there. Be back after these messages.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
My son was in the Army back during Desert Storm, but even then he wanted an MBA. He looked at a dozen schools, but only one offered the online education and flexibility he needed while he was in a tent in Iraq. Grantham University. Turns out that Grantham's been delivering affordable, relevant college and advanced degrees for over 65 years. Heck, if they can deliver a quality education to a soldier in a tent overseas, think about the flexibility Grantham can offer you so you can earn your degree too. It doesn't matter how complicated or full your life is. If getting a degree is on your bucket list, you'll want to do what my son did. You'll want to call Grantham. Find out how easy it is to get started on your education so you can check that college degree off your bucket list. Call Grantham right now. 800-910-1370. That's 800-910-1370. Flexible, affordable, relevant. Call 800-910-1370.
Welcome back to Conservative Sense on the CSA Radio Network. So far, we've covered some of these successes of the Tea Party movement in the last decade, and there is no doubt that there were many, many successes. The methods we used, however, are quite different from the methods of the left. There's a famous book called Rules for Radicals that the left uses to influence electorates and countries and people using a certain set of rules of engagement. Now, in our particular case, we used common sense approach. We used information. We rallied in the streets. We brought attention to our issues, and we tried to educate the population on what was happening. We were ruled by common sense, ruled by issues. The left doesn't do that. When the left wants to come to power, they don't use ideas. They don't talk about policy. They talk about individuals. They use the policies of personal destruction. Now, it's not a mistake that they do that. If you were to read Rules for Radicals, you'll see that the last thing they ever want to do in winning a political fight is to talk about ideas. So what they do is they attack the messenger. They attack the individuals. They attack them personally, not on their policies. Now, you may have seen in the last couple of years that is exactly what they're doing to Donald Trump. Now, Trump was no conservative in his history. We've seen that. As a matter of fact, Conservative Society for Action wasn't sure we would support Trump in the presidential primaries, but he's since proved himself to be pretty much a fiscal conservative. Not so much on other issues, but that's not important to us. We believe that the country needs to be run smartly. We believe in the free market system. We believe in capitalism. And we believe that the basic strength, inherent strength of the United States will come through if the people are left to take care of business on their own. But the left is not going to talk about that. They're not going to talk about the great unemployment. They're not going to talk about the strong economy. They're not going to talk about the successes in foreign policy, international relations, trade, etc., because that would hurt their cause. So what have they done? They went to Rules for Radicals, and they went out to attacking Trump personally. His family, who he talks to, where he does business, his tax returns, and this whole collusion concept, which obviously, based on the Mueller report, apparently is not true. Now, they don't even care that the report is true. They've sat there for 2 years and said, oh, it's all about collusion. It's all about Trump being a criminal, and it just isn't true. But it doesn't matter. They're still going to talk that line because they have to attack him personally. Now, these people on the left are very adept at this. They're very successful at it. They understand how to get involved in institutions, especially the educational institutions, in order to get their message across. And it all comes down to class warfare. If you've noticed some of the presidential candidates on the left side, the Democrat side right now, what do they talk about? All they're talking about is class warfare. They're talking about corporate greed. They're talking about rich people against poor people. They're talking about entitlements. They're talking about free stuff. These are the types of things that typically the left is good at promising because it's easy to do so. You don't necessarily have to deliver. It's far easier to say I'm going to give you free stuff than it is to loosen up an economy and to unlock the economic power of the United States, such as has happened in the last couple of years. The economic viability of the country has never been stronger, and there's a reason for it. And it's certainly not a reason that came from the left. Our final segment will be up shortly. Thanks for listening.
This is firefighter Raphael Poirier from Firehouse Subs. Introducing new Firehouse Pairs. Pair your favorite small sub with a signature side, like the awesome 5-cheese mac and cheese. And remember, a portion of every purchase at Firehouse Subs goes towards helping first responders. Firehouse Subs. Enjoy more subs, save more lives. Participating locations only. Firehouse Subs will donate a minimum of $1 million in 2019 to the Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation by donating 0.11% of every purchase.
Hi, I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans. 30% of Americans who are planning home improvements of $5,000 or more will pay for those renovations with a high-interest credit card. That may not be a great idea. A better idea may be to take cash out of your home with a Quicken Loans 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. The rate today on our 30-year fixed-rate mortgage is 4.5%, APR 4.78%. Call us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com.
Rate subject to change. Pay 2% fee to receive this discounted rate. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. License in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
Welcome back to Conservative Sense on the CSA Radio Network. In our final segment today, we're going to talk about another tactic that the left likes to use. In addition to political correctness to stifle opposition, there's also outright suppression of information taking place today. It's unprecedented, pretty much because of new technology and new ways to do it, but it's happening. It's very clearly happening in a number of places. I have firsthand experience. Just a little background. The Conservative Society for Action went on to Facebook about 4 or 5 years ago to start to distribute our information. It was quite successful. As a matter of fact, we've been able to generate massive numbers in the last couple of months. Just this year alone, on Facebook, the Conservative Society for Action Facebook page was able to generate over 13 million impressions and about another 8 million interactions. That is, people who have listened, posted, responded, commented, or shared information. Well, I guess somebody noticed over at Facebook, because what they've attempted to do now is suppress the information that Conservative Society for Action has been putting out in the last number of months. As I said, we've been averaging over 5 million hits a month on our Facebook page. But something happened on April 25th, just a week ago. For the entire month of April, that is April 1st through April 24th, the CSA Facebook page averaged 220,000 impressions a day. 220,000 impressions a day average. On April 25th, it went to 84,000. Then it went to 74,000. By the 28th, it was 48,000. By the 30th, it was 38,000. And now in the last couple of days, it's been 20,000. It looks like somebody at Facebook does not like what CSA is doing and putting out on its Facebook page. They've gone on a program to suppress the information and suppress the people who are listening and paying attention to the posts that we are putting out. This, ladies and gentlemen, is censorship. It's censorship in the 21st century and censorship in America. Now, it's not political censorship by the form of the government. It's even worse than that. We're talking about what's supposed to be an open platform for the discussion of ideas. And people at Facebook have decided that people with a conservative point of view don't deserve to distribute that information. They have selectively targeted organizations such as the Conservative Society for Action, for which they call shadow banning. And when you talk to Facebook, they will say that they do not suppress information. As a matter of fact, a quote from the company, "We believe banning, simply banning any page accused of fake news, would be contrary to the basic principles of free speech. Instead, we demote individual pages, etc., that are reported by Facebook users and rated as false by fact checkers. This means they lose 80% of any future views." Now, of course, they don't demote anybody who shared false information about so-called Russian collusion or other false assertions that people have made. Those websites go out and distribute that information without any limits whatsoever. But organizations like Breitbart, for instance, and our organization, Conservative Society for Action, have been shadow banned. And it's clear that they have done this. We're asking people out there to talk to Facebook, to spread the information, and let people know that this is a problem and that it's happening. This is a fundamental attack on freedom of speech here in the United States. This is a threat to the freedom of all Americans. It must stop. Please, please help spread the word. Well, that's all we have time for today. Thanks for listening to Conservative Sense. I hope you join us next time.
This is a hamburger. And this, friends, is a Whataburger.
A fresh 100% beef patty so big it can only fit on a 5-inch bun. Oh, there's another. Someone's going for a double. Maybe it'll be topped with melted cheese and, oh my goodness, grilled onions and grilled jalapenos. I'm not sure the speakers can handle any more sizzle. Good thing you can do more than just hear the difference. Good thing there's Whataburger.